Hey folks, Greg here from GamerPops. Today we're going to talk about Risk, the brand new board game to video game from Ubisoft and Hasbro. So if you've ever played Risk before, it's one of those classic tabletop games, involves world domination as you move your units around from region to region, trying to take over whole continents while you try to keep your opponents from doing the same. So Ubisoft has brought out a brand new version of this. We talked about their Monopoly game in my last video, which was really nicely done, and it's the same with this game. If you're a Risk fan, I don't think you'll find anything to complain about here. And if you're new to the game, it's a fairly, I'll say the learning curve is not too steep, but the difficulty can be. So the biggest issue is that, so much of the game, it's a healthy combination of strategy and luck. And as you'll see here, in this portion of the gameplay that I snipped for you, my luck was terrible. Now, I was probably being a little more aggressive than I should be, but every time I rolled, it just did not come up in my favor. Yellow and red were taking over a lot more of the map, and every time I tried to do something, it didn't work out well for me. But you can see there's a nice kind of, digitized virtual reality kind of approach to the board game. It's not as, it's not static and flat like it would be if you're playing, with the out of the box version. And I'm okay with that here because Ubisoft, they kept it reasonable. They didn't go over the top and, make it like a full-blown war sim. It's still, a game where you're taking over territories by, loading up your units, attacking the other units. They certainly could have gone in that real heavy-duty version where it would almost become like a version of StarCraft, essentially. So this might be the only time I've ever said this, but I applaud Ubisoft's restraint. It definitely makes for a better product. As you can see, though, it's not working out too well for me as all of my lovely blue squares, or blue spaces, are turning red. Not my best game here. But what's nice in the game is you can play with a mix of opponents, both human and AI, to really flesh out the game. It plays well. It's a fast-paced game, which is nice. Risk is one of those things that can take forever. It doesn't have to be the case here, and everything's handled really nicely. I would say, though, it's pretty much a game for fans. You've kind of got to know what you're doing to get that early enjoyment out of there. If you don't know the game, now here I'm going to show you an example too. I'm going to interrupt myself. This is where my dice rolls are terrible, and whereas I should have had an easy path into South Africa, didn't work out that way. Anyway, as I was saying, it's a game that you can get into, but it could be very frustrating from the beginning, and I think if you're not a fan of the game to begin with, you might find that to be frustrating to the point of wondering, why did I, spend my money on this? If you have a friend who's a Risk fan, I would recommend checking it out. But all in all, and see, there we go. I took over finally, but I lost too many units doing that, and that's why this game, this particular mission did not work out so well for me. But I would say, in general, if you're a fan of Risk, I would check this out. I like that it's similar to the Monopoly that just makes a game that can be very complex on a tabletop. This makes it a lot simpler, and I'm okay with that. And I don't think you really lose anything in the process. And of course, it gives you the ability to play anytime you want without having to necessarily have other people to play with, or at least not other people right beside you. So that's always a plus. So if you're a Risk fan, check it out. If you're not a Risk fan, see if somebody you know has it. If not, I wouldn't recommend jumping in. It's not quite that kind of game. But now I'm going to focus on seeing if I can take over the rest of Africa and then continue on to world domination. So talk to you soon and hope you have a great gaming session.